They put up a fence across my own ranch road. Said it was to protect community access. Funny, since I own the land. So I left their gate standing, but added something new, a toll box. Now, every time they drive through, they're paying me to cross my own property. They want to control. Instead, they're funding my next upgrade. I've always believed that land remembers. The way a trail carves into soil after 1,000 hooves have passed. The groove a gate makes as it swings open every morning and every night. The quiet stillness at sunrise when the wind crosses the field just like it did 100 years ago. My ranch wasn't just a piece of land. It was a legacy passed down through hands that worked it, bled for it, and protected it like family. We weren't fancy folk. Never needed to be. The ranch wasn't flashy. It wasn't sprawling like those TV cattle empires. But it was ours. Fully paid for, proudly maintained, and lived on with care and purpose. We had one main gate, the same one my dad used and his dad before him. It sat near the southern edge of the property, right off a narrow strip of gravel road that wrapped around to the back pasture. The gate opened directly onto what used to be open ranch land, but in the last 15 years, it had become something else. A subdivision, with an HOA. Now let me be clear, I wasn't anti-HOA from the start. When the first row of homes went up along the edge of the property, I figured it was inevitable. People want fresh air and open skies, and developers are always hungry for land they can dress up and parcel out. The road that led past my gate became the eastern entrance to a community with cul-de-sacs, basketball hoops, solar-paneled rooftops, and mailbox clusters with laminated HOA notices posted like sacred texts. At first, we got along just fine. The HOA board was run by a small group of retired folks who mostly kept to themselves. We'd wave from across the split-rail fence, exchange nods if we happened to reach our mailboxes at the same time. They asked me once if they could run a fiber line through the edge of the field, and I said no, politely but firmly. They didn't argue. There were rules, sure, but they stayed on their side of the property line, and I stayed on mine. The only shared space between us was that narrow stretch of road, maybe 15 feet wide, that my family had always used to reach the pasture gate. The thing is, that road wasn't theirs. It never had been. It was a legal easement, recorded in county records, mapped out decades before the HOA existed. My great-grandfather negotiated it when the ranch was first split off from a larger plot, guaranteeing access through that exact strip for agricultural transport, livestock passage, and property ingress. The language was old-fashioned, but the meaning was rock-solid. That path to the gate was mine to use forever, and I used it every single day. I'd pull the truck through with feed sacks and fencing tools. Ranch hands brought their ATVs in that way. We even had a livestock hauler that backed through twice a year during Roundup. The gate sat right at the bend in the easement, convenient, functional, and entirely legal. I had cameras posted, more for coyotes and vandals than for people, but they caught the occasional neighborhood kids slipping through to chase frogs or cut across to the park. I never made a fuss. I remember being a kid myself, wandering between barbed wire and brush before I knew what boundaries meant. As long as nobody messed with the cattle or broke a fence, I didn't raise hell. Live and let live. But as the years passed, the neighborhood changed. New people moved in. People with city manners and suburban expectations. The kind that got fussy about noise before 8 a.m. or the smell of manure when the wind shifted. The new board members were younger, not in age, but in patience. They started sending letters to homeowners for planting non-native shrubs, then for leaving their trash bins out too long. Eventually, it was about unauthorized garden flags and how many vehicles could be parked in a driveway. Karen came next. Not her real name, but close enough in spirit. She got elected to the HOA board with promises of curb appeal revitalization and community standards enforcement. You'd think she was running for mayor the way she strutted around with that clipboard. People who once waved at me started looking away when I passed their street. She never came to my door. Not at first, but I could feel her presence watching that easement road like it was her personal driveway. Still, even with the growing tension, my daily routine didn't change. Up at 5. Gate open by 5:30. Truck loaded by 6. I check the cattle lines, rotate irrigation, and make it back in time for coffee and invoices. The road stayed clear, just like it always had. Even the HOA landscapers, who used that back road for hauling mulch and branches, nodded when they passed me. For a while, the balance held. We didn't need to talk to understand each other. That was the beauty of rural living. Until the morning, everything changed. It was early, fog still hanging low over the fence line. I drove out like normal, coffee in hand, and turned toward the gate. But something stopped me. Literally. A fence. Brand new aluminum posts. Criss-cross pattern. Gleaming like it had been put in overnight. It stretched across the full width of the easement road, right up against my gate, effectively blocking it entirely. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Some contractor error. Maybe a crew meant to fence off a HOA garden patch or trail path and measured wrong. I put the truck in park and walked up to inspect it. No construcción marques. No open ends. Just a clean, sealed, locked panel that said, "Community access point, do not enter." I stood there for a long time. Not angry. Not confused. Just amazed. A fence. Across my gate. Blocking my ranch access. Without warning. Without permission. Without a single knock on my door. It didn't matter that I had a deed. It didn't matter that the road was an easement. To them, it was just another patch of ground they didn't recognize as someone else's. And to Karen, it was probably the crown jewel in her clipboard crusade. I turned around and walked back to the house. Didn't call anyone. Didn't yell. Just pulled the file from my drawer, the one with the old maps, the county plat sheets, the notarized easement documents signed in the 1960s, and laid it all out on the table. Because if they wanted to play with gates, fences, and boundaries, they were about to find out who actually owned the road they were so eager to block that I didn't go looking for a fight. When I first saw that fence blocking my gate, I didn't storm off or yank it down. I didn't make threats or call the sheriff. I assumed, in good faith, that someone had made a mistake, a contractor, a landscaper, maybe even some overeager volunteer group with too much aluminum and too little sense. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I contacted the HOA. The first call went unanswered. The second was answered by a chipper voice that introduced herself as Brittany and said she'd pass along my concern to the board president. I didn't even need her to say the name. I already knew who it was. Karen. I gave a day. No response. The fence remained. My gate, the one I'd used daily for over a decade, now had a HOA-branded chain link wall sitting 6 inches in front of it. You could still see the gate behind it, taunting me like a window into the life they thought they could shut off. So I drove around to the front of the HOA office, walked up the ramp with my folder full of property records, and asked to speak with Karen directly. She met me in the boardroom, clipboard in hand, name tag pinned like a badge, and a tight smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. Yes, the gate, she said before I could even introduce myself. Let's just clear this up, I said, laying the documents on the table. That gate sits on a legal easement. My easement, recorded and enforced by county records. It predates this HOA by at least 40 years. I've used it every day since I bought the ranch. I need it for work, livestock, deliveries. Yes, she interrupted, flipping through a folder of her own, but as you can see in our community bylaws, that area is now part of a shared perimeter path. The fence is for safety, especially for children using the walking trail behind the garden lots. It's a gravel road, I replied, not a walking path, and you can't block an easement. This isn't negotiable. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you the fence needs to come down. Karen's smile flattened. Her eyes didn't blink. Our legal team has reviewed the situation, she said. We feel confident the fence is compliant. You feel confident? Yes, she said simply. It was the kind of arrogance only someone holding a clipboard could produce. The kind that believed structure, rules, and HOA vote margins outweighed legal documents and 100 years of land rights. I'm trying to resolve this peacefully, I said. But if you don't remove the fence, I'll be forced to pursue legal action. Karen cocked her head. Are you threatening to sue the HOA? I'm promising to defend my land, I said calmly. And my rights. She closed her folder slowly, as if signaling the meeting was over. We'll note your position in our records. If you continue using unauthorized access points, you may be subject to HOA fines under Article 12b, unauthorized vehicle entry on maintained community terrain. I actually laughed. Not loud, just a disbelieving breath of air through my nose. Unauthorized vehicle entry? I said, onto my own gate. Karen shrugged. You're not a resident of the HOA. No, I said, standing. I'm just the guy who owns the land your fence is illegally sitting on. That was the last polite conversation we had. A few days later, I received a formal letter. Typed, sealed, stamped, complete with HOA letterhead and official tone. Notice of non-compliance. You are in violation of HOA regulations regarding perimeter usage. The gate at the rear of Lot 47, adjacent to community trail access, is not authorized for mechanical entry and must remain inactive. Any use of the area by trucks, tractors, or livestock trailers will incur a fine of $150 per instance. Failure to comply may result in legal action. I stared at the paper. $150 a trip, just for using the access point that belonged to me. No legal citation, no county reference, just HOA authority attempting to override a century of recorded land rights. And they didn't stop there. Within a week, I started seeing new signs go up along the trail near the fence. Private HOA property, authorized use only. No ranch traffic beyond this point. Violators will be reported. I hadn't even crossed their precious fence. I'd driven around, taken the long way through my north gate, and started avoiding the HOA altogether. But that didn't stop them from posturing. They weren't just blocking access anymore. They were trying to rewrite the narrative. In their version, I was the trespasser. It all came to a head at the next HOA open meeting. I wasn't technically a member, but HOA rules allowed adjacent property stakeholders to attend and speak, as long as they signed in and kept comments under 5 minutes. I did just that. Karen sat at the front of the community center in her designated spot, flanked by 2 other board members and a folding flag. I waited my turn, then stepped up to the mic. I'd like to speak about the illegal fence installed on my easement road, I said. I brought documentation for the board, as well as copies of the easement filing and county assessor maps. Karen cut in immediately. This issue has already been addressed, she said, her voice sharp. And your time is limited to HOA-related concerns. A murmur went through the room. Someone in the back said, "Let him talk, Karen." I looked her in the eye. You're blocking access to legally recorded land with a fence you had no right to build. That is an HOA concern, because every fine you issue, every notice you send, every post you make pretending that gate belongs to you, is a legal liability waiting to land in your lap. Karen opened her mouth, but one of the board members beside her leaned into the mic. "Let's take a look at the documents," he said. That shut her up, at least for the moment. I passed the folder across. Every page, stamped, signed, filed. Easement date, county plat overlay. Even the original land use map from 1973. The room went quiet as the board flipped through it. Karen, sitting stiff, didn't say another word. After the meeting, I walked to my truck and found a small crowd of residents waiting. A few quiet supporters, people who were tired of Karen's nonsense but hadn't found the nerve to speak up before. "You really own that road?" one asked. "Since before your HOA existed," I said. Another leaned in and whispered, "Just make her pay." That'd be the sweetest revenge. That comment stuck with me, because I wasn't interested in revenge. But consequences? I was wide open to those. If Karen and her HOA thought fences gave them power, then maybe it was time to show them what actual property control looked like. Not through threats, not through confrontation, through legal control, financial pressure, paperwork, strategy. They blocked my gate. Fine. I'd turn the gate into something they'd never forget. There's a particular kind of silence that falls when a man gets serious. Not the silence of defeat. No, not that. I'm talking about the silence where gears start turning, pencils start scribbling, and old file drawers start creaking open. That's the space I entered the week after the HOA doubled down on their fence. They thought they'd won. They thought a few laminated signs, an aluminum gate, and an HOA memo could override a deed that had outlived their bylaws their landscaping committee, and even the very asphalt under their feet. They underestimated the one thing no clipboard could conquer: land records. I started with the basics. My grandfather's deed, yellowed at the corners, still sat in a fireproof box in the back of my study. I laid it out under a warm desk lamp and traced my finger across the same hand-signed easement clause I'd seen a dozen times before. A permanent access right-of-way, 15 feet in width, running from the southeast property line through to County Road 428 for the purpose of ingress, egress, and livestock movement. It wasn't poetic, but it was powerful. 15 feet of gravel road. Recorded. Permanent. Indisputable. And the HOA had fenced across it like it was decorative mulch. I spent the next day at the county clerk's office. Maps, filings, archived permits. The kind of paperwork most folks never touch unless they're subdividing land or filing suit. But I wasn't most folks. I had a mission. After 2 hours with a patient records clerk named Sonia and a stack of plat overlays, I found what I needed. A detailed land survey from 2006. The HOA's walking path? It ran directly over the old ranch easement. But more importantly, the fence they had installed curved inward, cutting into a 2-foot strip of property that was still legally mine. They hadn't just blocked access. They had built a structure on private land without permission. That's trespass. Civil at minimum. Criminal, depending on how far I wanted to take it. I took the documents and walked them straight into the office of a local attorney who specialized in property disputes. I'd worked with him once before, years ago, when a neighbor's tree dropped half its weight on my cattle fence. His name was Clay Duncan. Gruff voice, square jaw, boots under the desk. My kind of guy. He spent 10 minutes flipping through the folder in silence, nodding slightly with every page. When he got to the map overlay showing the fence line overlapping my land, he let out a single low whistle. "Damn," he said. "They did this without a setback permit." "They didn't do anything legally," I replied. Clay leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "Well, I can draft a cease and desist by noon. That'll get their attention." I nodded. "Good. But I'm thinking longer term." He raised an eyebrow. "Meaning, I want to make sure they never try something like this again. I want to fix they feel in their budget, not just their pride." That's when I showed him the statute I'd printed off the county planning website. Ordinance 42.14, a rarely used section of local law that allowed for private easement tolls, as long as the landowner could prove ownership, legal access history, and structural control of the road point. It was meant for private bridges and mountain road switchbacks. But technically, it applied to my gate. Clay smiled slowly. "You're serious?" "As serious as the fines they try to hit me with," I said. Step 1. Confirm boundaries. Clay connected me with a certified land surveyor named Regina, who showed up 3 days later in a county license truck with more tripods and lasers than a sci-fi film. She walked the property lines with me, referencing old iron pins buried in the dirt and GPS markers plotted against the official tax maps. By the end of the day, she confirmed it. The HOA's fence wasn't just blocking the gate. It extended 2.3 feet onto my land. And her footpath? It ran entirely over my recorded easement, the one they pretended didn't exist. She handed me a signed certificate with her seal. "Want me to testify if it goes to court?" she asked. "Maybe," I said, "but I'm thinking of charging rent instead." She laughed, packed up her truck, and left me with gold. Step 2. Establish toll rights. Clay filed the necessary paperwork with the county, a notice of intent to convert easement access into a fee-based passageway due to encroachment, interference, and prolonged obstruction. It sounded fancier than it was. In essence, I was saying, "You block my road. Now I'm legally registering it as a controlled access point. And if you want to use it, you'll have to pay." The county clerk approved it. There were no laws against it, and plenty of precedent supporting it. It became official within a week. Step 3. Infrastructure. I installed a simple swing arm barrier. Nothing too industrial, just enough to show control. On one side, a small sign. "Private toll access begins here. $5 per entry. Payable via digital invoice or annual pass. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Easement hashtag 471 B, certified and recorded. I wasn't trying to make a fortune, but I was going to make a point. And I made sure a copy of every toll notice went straight to the HOA inbox, including a calculation of their landscaping trucks, neighborhood dog walkers, and weekly garbage contractors that had been using the road. Effective immediately, the letters said, all use of easement hashtag 471. B will incur a per-use fee unless otherwise negotiated with the property owner. Backdated usage for the past 90 days is attached. Total, $1,725. Karen called me the next day. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her tone was different this time. No more clip professionalism or faux authority. Just barely contained panic. This is overreach, she stammered. You can't. We're the HOA. You can't charge the HOA to use its own path. I played it twice. Then I filed it away with the rest of the documents. Because here's the thing. She couldn't stop me. The HOA could huff and puff, but at the end of the day, they weren't the ones who built that road. They didn't sign the easement. They didn't raise cattle on that land or fix the gravel ruts every spring or lay down feed bins in the winter. I did. My grandfather did. And no one, not even a president with a custom clipboard, was going to erase that with a fence. The moment the toll signs went up, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. They tried to spin it as a property access misunderstanding. They tried to claim the path was part of a shared community zone, until Clay sent them a notarized packet of documentation with Regina's survey, the deed, and a letter stating, any refusal to honor this toll may result in civil trespass claims and property damages. Any attempt to remove signage, barriers, or alter the road surface without written permission will result in immediate legal escalation. They backed off. Fussed. Some residents weren't happy, mostly the ones who had used that path as a shortcut for years. But most? They started asking questions. Why didn't we know the HOA didn't own the road? Why were we told that fence was required by county codes? Why are we getting toll invoices from a rancher whose land existed long before this subdivision? I didn't answer them. Didn't need to. The paperwork spoke for itself. And so did the click of that toll barrier swinging closed. By the time the sign went up, I already knew what was coming. I'd seen this before, not on paper, not in law books, but in people. The look they get when the power they're so used to wielding suddenly gets pulled out from under them. When the script flips. When a man they tried to fence out shows up with a toll sign and a permit in his hand. And this time, the sign didn't just mark my gate. It marked a line they'd never be able to walk back across. I kept it simple. Black lettering on white metal. Clear, polite, and completely legal. Private access, toll road. Easement 471B. This path is not HOA property. Authorized for agricultural and delivery use only. All HOA vehicles, landscaping crews, and community contractors must register and submit toll fees. Fee, $5 per entry. Monthly passes available. Enforcement begins immediately. Violators will be invoiced. Underneath that sign, I mounted a motion-activated camera with a high-resolution license plate reader. Fully permitted, fully visible, and aimed squarely at the stretch of gravel they'd once claimed as theirs. Next to the camera, I placed a toll box. Not for coins. That would have been petty. No, this was high-tech. RFID sensors for tag tracking, invoice by email software, and a QR code that linked to a digital payment portal titled Hua Saiton Bon Chambay Muimot Bay. And just like that, the path they blocked became a revenue stream. The first few days, the HOA ignored it. Karen didn't respond to the formal notice Clay emailed, the one that included the survey maps, legal filings, and photographic evidence of the fence encroachment. They must have thought I was bluffing. But then the invoices started arriving. Line-itemed, time-stamped, supported by 1080p camera footage. Each HOA truck or service vehicle using the easement was billed $5 per entry, all backed by county-recognized documentation, all sent directly to the HOA's official mailing address and Karen's email with the subject line, Notice of Toll Access Use, Payment Due. At first, they didn't reply. Then came the denial. Karen sent back a reply with big red letters across the top. Do not recognize authority. This is HOA property. Clay responded with one sentence. See attached recorded easement documentation, county authorization, and survey map confirming ownership and private toll rights under Ordinance 42.14. He attached the same documentation again. I swear if Karen's printer had feelings, it would have quit out of sympathy. A few residents noticed the sign right away. They stopped to read it. Some even scanned the QR code, probably thinking it was a prank. Others stood across the trail with folded arms and suspicious eyes. Word started to spread in whispers and email threads. But when the landscapers rolled through and got a toll invoice, it was real enough. Then came the trash service, $35 billed in a week. Then a mobile dog grooming van, twice in one day. Then Karen's own SUV, 3 days in a row, all captured on camera. They weren't laughing anymore. That weekend, I hosted a small barbecue, just a few friends from out of town and a couple of neighbors who'd quietly thanked me for putting her in her place. We were sitting around a fire pit when one of the HOA board members, a guy named Mitch, walked over, hands in his pockets, looking sheepish. "Mind if I ask you something?" he said. "Depends," I replied. "Are you here in a personal or official capacity?" He chuckled. "Personal. Trust me." I nodded and waved him over. He sat on the edge of the deck and sighed. Did Karen really approve the fence without a survey? I raised an eyebrow. "You're on the board. You tell me." He winced. "She just told us it was within HOA boundaries and that she'd run it by legal. We didn't know it crossed your property. At least, not like this." I said nothing. Mitch ran a hand through his hair. "Look," he continued, "I just wanted to say this toll road thing, it's kind of genius. Painful, but genius. People are starting to get real mad at her." I shrugged. "She played stupid games." He nodded. "And now we're paying entrance fees to the prize." By Monday, the HOA inbox was on fire. Residents were forwarding their own invoices, not just for trucks, but for their teenage kids cutting through the easement to reach the park trail. Karen sent out a defensive mass email titled "False Toll Notifications. Do not pay," claiming I was running an unauthorized private scam. Big mistake. Clay responded within hours. All notices are backed by verified records. Continued usage without payment will be considered trespass and may result in formal action. You are advised to cease defamatory language against the property owner. The HOA board called an emergency session. Karen didn't invite me, but by then, she didn't need to. The signs, the invoices, the fence footage, they were doing the talking for me. Midweek, I received a hand-delivered envelope with the HOA seal. Inside was a letter titled, "Request for Easement Negotiation." It was from the other board members. Polite, respectful, no threats, no demands. Just a clear message. They wanted to talk. They wanted to review easement use options, clarify past misunderstandings, and consider a shared access agreement. Translation? They were ready to bend. But here's the thing. I wasn't angry. I wasn't after revenge. I just wanted them to understand that rights are not suggestions, and property lines aren't polite debates. They're law, they're history, they're boundaries. And when someone breaks one, they don't get to dictate the terms of forgiveness. Still, I agreed to meet. Not out of mercy, out of professionalism. We sat down at a folding table under the HOA pavilion. Karen was there, quieter than I'd ever seen her. No clipboard, no blizzard, just a forced smile and darting eyes. The board offered to remove the fence, pay for the survey costs, and cover half the toll invoices. I smiled politely, then slid across a printed statement. To clear all outstanding toll debt, the HOA must pay the full balance of usage to date, formally acknowledge the easement as private, with no future claim of jurisdiction, submit a written apology for unlawful obstruction. Silence. Then Karen spoke up, voice cracking slightly. "You want us to apologize?" In writing. I didn't blink. "You try to fence me out of my own land. Then fine me for using it. If we're going to move forward, it starts with accountability." She didn't respond, but she didn't argue either. By the next board meeting, the fence was gone, removed by the same contractor who installed it. The sign stayed. So did the toll box. But now, there was a new sign beneath it. Access for HOA landscaping vehicles granted via monthly agreement. All other use requires individual permission. By order of the easement owner. It was subtle, quiet, and completely humiliating. Karen didn't show up to the next two board meetings. Rumor had it, she planned to step down for health reasons. I didn't celebrate. I didn't spike the ball. I just opened my gate like I always had, clean, uninterrupted, and legally protected. And I smiled every time another HOA truck rolled past the camera. Because some roads are built with gravel, and some, they're paved with justice. The official resignation came on a Thursday. No drama, no final statement. Just a one-line email to the HOA mailing list from Karen herself. Effective immediately, I am stepping down from my position as HOA president due to personal reasons. The neighborhood knew exactly what those reasons were. They had names like Toll Road, camera footage, and Easement 471B. It was the most peaceful day we'd had all year. At the following board meeting, the atmosphere was different, less stiff, fewer people trying to look important. The new interim president, a soft-spoken man named Alan, opened with an apology. We acknowledge the mistake made regarding the easement and are working to ensure such overreach never happens again. We thank the landowner for his patience. He didn't say my name. Didn't need to. Everyone there already knew it. They offered to fully restore access to my gate, remove the remaining signposts, re-level the gravel, replant grass where they dug up the trail. I declined. Thanks, I said, but it's already restored with interest. They nodded, understanding that what was once free was now a privilege. And privileges cost money. Some residents tried to negotiate. Hey, can't we get a neighbor discount? Or, I barely use the road. Do I still have to pay? I didn't get offended. I just pointed to the website. Monthly access pass, $50. One-time entry, $5. Annual service rate. Custom terms available. Not a scam. Not a power play. Just the fair market price of learning what boundaries mean. I didn't spend the money on a new truck or a victory sign. Instead, I fixed up the fencing along the old pasture, reinforced the gate with solar-powered access controls, and donated the first $2,000 in toll payments to the local 4-H youth club, anonymously. Let the kids raise some goats and learn about land respect the right way. Though a few neighbors did figure it out. I caught one of them dropping off a thank you note in my mailbox. It was shaped like a toll booth, made out of cardboard, and inside was a $5 bill taped to a card that said, "Worth every penny." The best part? Peace returned. Not just to my ranch, but to the community itself. Without Karen's shadow looming over them, folks started planting things again. Flowers, garden lights. One guy even hung a wind chime without getting a citation. The board stopped measuring mailbox heights and started asking actual questions at meetings. And the easement road? Still active. Still monitored. Still mine. Every so often, I'll catch someone pause at the gate, smile at the sign, and wave at the camera like they're greeting an old friend. Sometimes I wave back. I didn't win because I yelled the loudest. I didn't dig up their fences or threaten anyone. I just knew the land. And when the HOA tried to block me from what was rightfully mine, I didn't fight fire with fire. I fought it with paperwork, patience, and perfectly legal toll collection. And now, every time a delivery truck drives through and clicks that sensor, I hear the most satisfying sound in the world. Zajing. If your HOA thinks fencing you out means fencing you in, just smile and turn their mistake into your profit. Because out here, the road runs both ways, and mine just started charging per axle. See, the thing about land is that it doesn't care about titles, meetings, or who talks the loudest at the neighborhood barbecue. It answers to deeds, not declarations. And when someone forgets that, when they think they can redraw boundaries with a fence and a fine, the best thing you can do is hand them a toll bill. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to start a war. I just opened a gate, mounted a sign, and let the law do all the talking. Now the HOA has a choice. Take the long way around or pay the man they try to squeeze out. Either way, the message is the same. Out here, respect is earned, and so is access. So the next time someone tries to fence you out of what's yours, remember, the best revenge isn't loud. It's invoiceable.